Welcome back, everyone. Chanukah Sameach. We're going to speak about this week's Parshat Mikeitz. We all know what goes on in the Parsha. The brothers have no idea what's going on. It's a perfect example of dramatic irony. Do you think, by the way, that the great playwrights took inspiration from Tanakh in general and this Parsha specifically?
No question about it. There is a famous story told by the rabbi of St. Petersburg, I believe. One night, a knock on the door, and who is there? Lev Tolstoy, the greatest Russian writer. The rabbi was very, very surprised, and he asked him, Mr. Tolstoy, how can I help you? And he said, I want you to teach me Hebrew. To teach you Hebrew, why? So he said, I just read the story of Joseph and his brothers, and I decided that I must learn it in the original language. This is the best story ever written, and I believe that if indeed I'm going to learn it in the original language, I will find even more layers into the story. And actually, the wife of Tolstoy testified after he passed away that for 18 months, he studied Hebrew religiously, like from dawn to dusk. So here is just one example. Thomas Mann also wrote a book about Yosef Be'echav. I think that this is such an important story. If you just look on the story and you don't look on the religious layers, and in many, many ways, element of the lost brother, the united family after all the struggles and all the challenges, made its way to many, many books.
People often ask me if we prepare the questions ahead of time, if we discuss what we're going to say, how scripted it is. And I tell them that we're lucky if we have enough time to even record the podcast every week. And we try to keep it conversational. So we think, at least, if it was scripted and we knew exactly what the questions would be and what the answers would be, it would take away from the conversational nature of it. And even though this last question does seem like it was planted, but really we didn't discuss it beforehand, I think reading the psukim makes you realize there's so many good elements here. I'm not surprised to learn that even the great secular playwrights and authors were inspired by this.
It's a very important. I loved when you said in the introduction that this is a story that was written in an amazing way. And actually, if you think about Yosef, because what many people missed when they read the story, it looks like, really like an adventure story and suspense, and things are going and can fall every time, to veer from the main line of the story. But think about Yosef, because Yosef indeed scripted everything from the very beginning to achieve certain outcome. So this is indeed a story that not just happening. It was prescripted by Yosef because he wanted to achieve certain goal. And it's amazing to read how each element, this is something that requires lots of learning, each element of our Parsha, each turn in the story serves as a tool in the hands of Yosef to achieve his last goal, as we are going to read next week's Parsha.
I think the very obvious question here is, what exactly was Joseph's purpose here? He seems to torment the brothers. He's now in a position of power as opposed to when he was sold, of course. And this whole process, we have to realize, took probably months, right? They went back to Israel, they went down and back up. What was the purpose of making an entire drama out of revealing himself to the brothers? Why couldn't he just reveal himself to the brothers immediately?
Obviously, this is a very important question that the answer will shed light on not only on the details of the drama, but on everything that start with the birth of Yosef until the end of Sefer Bereshit. And you are absolutely right. Yosef planned it meticulously in order to achieve a certain outcome. That's very, very important to understand. Things are not happening here. Joseph was like an architect of one of the most impressive psychological experiments, because he had a purpose to all of this, and it was not to punish the brothers. The purpose was, in my opinion, to lead the family after such a disaster which happened in the hatred between brothers. Listen, Yosef knew that he had the job, that he had the role in the world. And the way he understood it, and apparently Yaakov understood it, was, at least on the beginning, that he's going to lead the family. And the family went through a crisis. The story of Mechirat Yosef is a crisis within the family, and in a certain way, we still eat from the rotten fruits of this hatred between brothers until this very day. But a great leader does not say, okay, I failed, we have to restart or to do something very different, to go to a different direction. You have to use the failure as a springboard to continuity, and maybe even for learning and to do things better. And in my opinion, if you examine every element in the story, that's exactly the purpose. He's looking for a way to rectify what was completely broken after his Mechira and the hatred of the brothers.
Let's dive deeper into that. Where do you see the contrast between his sale and what is happening now?
There is no question, and I think you alluded to it in the beginning of what you said. The most important thing here is the shift of power. Yosef was one person in the house of Yaakov against 10 of his brothers. This created a certain relationship, and in fact, they managed to overcome him and to sell him to the Egyptians. So it means that they used their power in a certain way to get rid of the main opponent of Yosef. Without going into the reason to their machloket and to their disagreement, but there is a certain structure of power here. When they come to Mitzrayim, everything changed. They are the helpless people. They cannot do anything. And if they thought about doing anything, Yosef shattered it by saying that they are spies. And this was very, very smart, because once you blame people to be spies, you know one thing: they are not going to open their mouths to say hi to anybody, because then immediately they will say that the enemy contacted people that he wanted to get some information from them. So Yosef made sure that they are going to be isolated completely from all the elements around them. Number two, he's the strongest person in Egypt in authority. And also, there is a reason why they arrive to Mitzrayim. They need food. And if he will say no, they will have no food and they will all die. And under this structure of such a dramatic shift of powers, Yosef wanted to teach them a lesson. What you really do with power. Unlike the use of power by the brother, Yosef is going to teach them that power can serve very positive purposes, and not just to get rid of your foes and opponents.
I think we see a few elements within the story that make it very clear that there's a connection here between the sale of Yosef and how that happened, and the episode that he's playing for them right now. Just again, it's these
Like
like
what?
breadcrumbs that the Torah throws at us that if you look closely, you can find. Just to give a couple of examples, what's the first thing that the brothers do after they throw Yosef in the pit?
וישבו לאכול לחם.
Yeshvu lechol lechem. Exactly. And what's the first thing that Yosef does to them when they come to his palace?
Throw a party.
Throw a party, and it specifically uses the word lechem. We also see the same idea with the silver, that they sold him for silver. We mentioned this when Avraham bought Marat Machpelah, when Yaakov purchased Shechem. the plot in Shechem. We also see that we used a specific currency. The Torah has no reason to tell us about transactions unless it's giving us a lesson. So maybe also the reason that it told us how much Yosef was sold for was exactly for this idea of kesef, and then he gets back at them by putting kesef in their sacks. There are some other connections between the clothing that he puts there, that they took off his clothing. So the Torah definitely hints at a connection between the two stories, and how the story of how he reveals himself to his brothers through all this torment and through putting them through the ringer, as it were, it comes to contrast with how they behaved when they sold him. And the commentaries do mention the fact that Yosef was constantly trying to make them think about how this is all happening because of what they did when they sold Yosef.
Once you mentioned the parallel between the story of selling him and what happened when they arrived to Mitzrayim, I think that it's very hard to pass on the another parallel, which is the story that happened a millennia after in Shushan Abira. Again, Chazal are telling us that in two places you see this like a moral decay where the brothers are sitting to eat while their brother suffers in the pit in the bore, and in Shushan, והמלך והמן ישבו לשתות. They just decreed that all the Jews are going to be killed, and for them, they just threw a party for themselves, ignoring completely the situation in Shushan that they created. Chachamim see the connection between these two stories, like the moral idleness, this ignoring completely the suffering of the other ones. Obviously, if you explore more, you see many, many parallels between the story of Purim, including the Mishneh Lamelech, Mordechai, and Yosef. You mentioned the Mechira and the Kesef. Remember that everything that happened in Purim was after Haman promised the king to give him 10,000 kikarot of Kesef. So there are many, many elements that the Torah and the Nevi'im want apparently us to read together and to at least have in our mind.
I want to maybe speak a little bit about the fact that, like you said, was all a test to see what they do with their power. But it is specifically seems to be, and again, we don't give away what happens in future weeks, but most of you will know that next week he reveals himself. How does Binyamin, being his only full brother, factor into this story?
I think that the whole reason that Joseph asked them to bring Binyamin, he wanted to create a situation that was very similar to the situation when they get rid of him. They said before, and it's not my idea, many are saying it, that he did not manipulate the brother, but he actually architected the whole experiment, psychological experiment, is to see whether there was a change in their behavior, in their attitude. He wanted to see if they are going to treat Binyamin the same way that he treated him. It will be connected to the idea of maybe Bnei Leah taking over, and they pushed aside Bnei Rachel, which is him. They already did it. And Binyamin, his brother, he was powerless, and they could easily, the moment he, for example, at the end of the Parsha, when he said that he is going to be his slave, they could go back home and actually to wash their hands clean and to say, not our fault. He stole the Gavia, we just came back, and Yosef actually made everything to reach this point with Binyamin to see how the brothers are going to behave this time. Are they going to repeat what they did with him, or they are going actually to do what actually the Torah is telling us, that stand for their brother, in a way do a tikkun, rectifying the terrible sin that they did with Joseph. And the moment he saw the change, well, we are going to read in next week's Parsha that Joseph himself also changed the whole plan and felt that it came to the desired outcome that he actually all the way aimed to.
It's difficult to theorize about counterfactual, but could there have been a situation where, let's say, the brothers would say, you know what, there's 10 of us, there's no need for us to all go into, to all die or to all become your slaves. You know, Binyamin did it. We're the future of the Jewish people. In that situation, and again, it's all theoretical, of course, would Yosef have not revealed himself to the brothers in the end?
I do believe that if he would reveal himself, it would not just ruin the story as you commented before, it will ruin the purpose. Because again, we have to understand he had a goal. He needed to bring the family together again. Once he would reveal himself, there will be a whole process of tikkun, of rectifying and doing tshuva for everything that they did. So he couldn't reveal himself. He couldn't. He simply couldn't, because then he will defeat everything that happened until now. The purpose was not to say, I'm Yosef, aha, you see, I always told you that you will come and bow to me, and here it happened. This was not the purpose. And by the way, Yosef himself also changed the views from Mamaloch Timloch Aleinu to more of a servant of a family, a person who helped the family to grow and to overcome difficulties. But this is like a chapter for itself. The important point that I want to highlight is, again, every step of the way was needed in order to achieve what he tried to achieve, to lead the family from a crisis to rebuilding the family for all the great things that were expected of the Abrahamic family.
At the end of the day, what exactly was being rectified here? What was the situation that Joseph was testing for? And how did the brothers, quote unquote, pass the test this time?
First of all, you need, mamash, like in any process of tshuva, they first of all had to acknowledge and to feel guilty about what they did, which happened. The moment things started to get messy, they realized that Hashem is planning all this because what they did to Yosef, which was acknowledgement. We were wrong. This is the first step to rectify everything else. Then I believe what happened at the end of this parsha with Binyamin, as we are going to see B'ezrat Hashem next week, where they, or Yehuda, especially Yehuda, the one who actually did not use his influence to save Yosef, now he is going to sacrifice his own life and his own future for another brother. Not like a direct, it was not like Yehuda and Reuven, Yehuda and Shimon. It was Yehuda and Binyamin, which are coming from different mothers. The moment they were united around the idea that they save every single brother, including Binyamin, I think this was the turning point, and this was the tikkun to what they did, getting rid so easily from Yosef.
I think it's a very good point that you're making, and I especially like the contrast when the brothers go back up and say he wants Binyamin to come as well. There's two approaches there of how to guarantee to Yaakov that they will actually come back. The first attempt is by the Bechor Reuven, who says what?
That he will kill his own children if he does not bring back Binyamin.
Exactly. And Yehuda, on the other hand, comes and says, what does Yehuda
וחטאתי
say?
להביא כל הימים.
V'chatati lavi kol hayamim. So Reuven makes a big guarantee here. Of course, he cares about his own children, but that's not the ultimate tshuvata mishkal, as we say. Like we have the concept of doing tshuva that's on the mishkal, meaning what you did and now how you fixed it has to actually balance out. Getting rid of someone else in the family in order to guarantee Binyamin's survival is not the ultimate tshuva, whereas Yehuda, who tells Yaakov, no, I will pay for in this life and the next life, that's taking responsibility. And that began the process that will continue next week, where Yehuda becomes the leader as opposed to Reuven, who was the Bechor.
I think, Yair, that you actually raise a very important point here. In order to do a process of tshuva, you have to feel the guilt. But some people stay with the guilt, like they feel guilty, and then what? Yehuda translated, unlike Reuben, as you well mentioned, he translated guilt to a motivator to do something. And this is a big difference between the Bechorah of Reuven and the leadership of Yehuda. Because Reuven said, I'm going to feel so guilty that I am going to kill my children, so trust me, I'm going to take full care because I cannot be that guilty that I will not return Binyamin. But Yehuda indeed understood it on a completely different level. He said, not only guilt, but I understand what is going to cost to you, Abba. I understand very well that this is going to be like a chet in this world and in the next world. So he translated the guilt to a motivator to do something positive here. And I believe that indeed that's exactly the difference between guilt and guilt deterrent to be leadership. By the way, a very similar process for everyone who learned Tanakh know that that's exactly what happened to David, a descendant of Yehuda, after the Chet of Bathsheba. He felt guilty, but he also did certain things in order to make sure that the leadership and the שלא יכבה נרו לעולם ועד, that the light of the Davidic dynasty is not going to be diminished.
I agree, and I think I would add to that that process actually starts with a chapter that we didn't discuss last week, the 38th chapter of Sefer Bereshit, which speaks about the story of Yehuda and Tamar, which seems kind of to be out of place. But that process of taking responsibility, of Tshuvat HaMishkal, of understanding what leadership looks like, began, I would say, in that chapter and rolls very nicely towards Yehuda's role in Mitzrayim.
This is a turning point, no question, of the entire story.
Thank you, Abba, for making the time again this week to speak about the Parsha and Chanukah as well. I know you have some travel coming up, so safe travels, and Shabbat Shalom and Chanukah Sameach.
To you and to all our listeners, and send my best regards to the entire family.
Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
V'kurei